Good morning. It is Saturday, February 16th, 2019. And here we go. Our first story is from World News Daily, and it tells us that the Senate is about to vote on February 25th on a bill to stop infanticide. And the subheading says pro-abortion Democrats who voted against this bill should be forced to explain why. I don't know about forced, but integrity suggests that they should explain why, and this was published 2 days ago. From Life News via World News Daily, the Senate will cast a vote on February 25th to break the Democratic filibuster against a bill to stop infanticide. As Life News reported, pro-abortion Senator Patty Murray blocked a vote on a bill from pro-life Republican Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska that would stop infanticide nationwide. And in the House, Democrats have blocked a request by Republicans to vote on a bill that would stop infanticide a total of 5 times. Earlier this month, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse had wanted to vote on a bill to protect babies from born alive after failed abortions. And I think that certainly is a worthy cause. The Sasse vote would have to come days after New York Governor Andrew Cuomo signed into law new legislation that allows abortions up to birth after Virginia Governor Ralph Northam backed infanticide during a radio interview, saying that he's perfectly content if doctors and parents discuss letting disabled babies die after birth. And there's a link at the end of this blurb, and you can read the full story. Our next story comes from Breitbart, and Maxine Waters has something to say again. Maxine Waters calls for rallies across America to send Trump a message: no fake emergency. So let's hear what Maxine has to say.
Governor Gavin Newsom of California, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
For more on the congressional response to the president's emergency declaration, I'm joined by Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters of California. What are the discussions happening right now among Democratic leadership in response to what the president announced today?
Well, let me just tell you, there are discussions going on about a resolution of disapproval. That resolution of disapproval can be taken up by either house and voted on, even if it's not sent to committee. And we can really let this president know what we think about this fake emergency that he's creating.
The resolution of disapproval, which my understanding on this is because of the National Emergencies Act, right? It gives Congress a check, and then both houses end up taking it up. I mean, there's an opportunity here for the Democratic-controlled House to sort of force the Senate's hand. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. If we take it up, they must take it up.
What do you think the politics of this are in the country and on Capitol Hill? The president, many people thought today, looked rather weak, like he was trying to explain a failure. What do you think?
Well, I think that this president is literally being pushed by the right-wing conservatives that he listens to every day when he's taking the so-called executive time, and they're saying to him, if you don't get this wall, you're not going to be reelected. And so he's up against the wall by trying to make sure that he does everything that he can to make it look as if he's fighting really hard to get this wall, because he believes, as they are advising him, that if he doesn't get it, he's not going to be reelected. He's lied so much about this so-called wall. First of all, don't forget, he told us that he was going to build a wall, a big, beautiful wall, and he was going to make Mexico pay for it.
And that's all I want to hear from Maxine Waters, because she has nothing of substance to say. if she had stuck to the legislation or if the commentator had steered the questioning into making her respond to facts about the drug trafficking, the human trafficking, or the illegal crossings, then maybe this would have been worth listening to. But let's just dive into the article a little bit. Friday on MSNBC's All In, Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat from California, called on Americans to protest across the country to send President Donald Trump a message that this declaration of a national emergency on the U.S.-Mexico border is fake. Waters said, I expect we're going to have a growing number of Republicans that are going to join with us in this disapproval. And this is the resolution that she's talking about, which means nothing. It's just a vote by both houses to say, hey, we don't like what you're doing, but it holds no water, and so it's a legislative waste of time. Let's move on. Links in the show notes. At the Warsaw Summit, Pence cites Jerusalem as a model for world peace. And this is from Breaking Israel News, and this was published by Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz yesterday. And he quotes Genesis 15:5. Look, he took him outside and said, he, meaning God, took him, meaning Abraham, outside and said, look towards the heaven and count the stars if you are able to count them. And he added, so shall your offspring be. And because he put his trust in God, he reckoned it to his merit. Genesis 15:5. In other words, because he put his trust in God in the first place, and he had looked and seen the stars and knew he couldn't count them, he believed God. And the reason that that is being quoted at the head of this article is that Vice President Mike Pence went to Warsaw for a summit, and on Thursday, Vice President Mike Pence addressed approximately 60 international leaders on the final day of the Warsaw Summit in Poland, emphasizing the imperative for nations to withdraw from the nuclear deal and for others to recognize the global threat posed by Iran. Pence called Iran, quote, the greatest threat to peace and security, close quote, in the Middle East. President Trump has called for, with Iran reinstating sanctions against the rogue nation. That's a badly written sentence. Participants in the summit also discussed the Islamic State and the conflicts in Yemen and Syria. In his address, Pence described the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, with Iran, negotiated by the Obama administration and signed in 2015, as disastrous and a devil's bargain with our enemy. The so-called Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action did not prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. It merely delayed the day when that vile regime would gain access to the world's deadliest weapons. Now, the reason that the scripture is at the head of the article is found a couple paragraphs down. At this point in his speech, Pence made a surprising segue. Quote, it is remarkable to think that more than 4,000 years ago, a man was called to leave his home in Ur of the Chaldees and make a long journey north, Pence said, to the gathering of world leaders. He wore no crown. He commanded no armies. He performed no miracles. He delivered no prophecies. Yet to him was promised, in those ancient words, descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, close quote. Quote, today Jews and Christians and Muslims, more than half the world's population, nearly all of the people of the Middle East claim Abraham as their forefather in faith, and so he is. I believe on that foundation of the Abrahamic tradition, we can find a firm foundation for a brighter future for all people and all faiths of the Middle East. It doesn't just simply have to be a part of our imagination. It is actually happening as we speak. And then he goes on to discuss Haram al-Sharif, or otherwise known as the Dome of the Rock that sits on what they allege to be the Temple Mount. And we've discussed that in the past. You can find it in our video collection. All right, let's move on. There's one more interesting story today that touches on the Bible. And scripture says that Christ will not return to earth until the gospel, in other words, the good news of his mission to us, God, Emmanuel, God with us, has been preached to all nations and languages. So from Christian Post, we have the headline, New Bible Translation Technology by Wycliffe, Spreading Gospel Faster Than Ever Before. Wycliffe is a Bible publication company, and they publish the Wycliffe translation. And this is by Brandon Showalter, a Christian Post reporter. New technology has emerged that will enable quicker translation of the Bible and faster spread of the gospel, accelerated by indigenous people doing work of translation. I knew a Bible translator about 20 years ago. She was a missioness to Papua New Guinea, and she went there as a younger woman. When I met her, she was in her late 60s or early 70s. And she spent a number of years, actually a couple of decades, I believe, in Papua New Guinea, living with the New Guineans and learning their language and learning how to properly express concepts and idioms in the New Guinea language, so that she could translate the Bible from English to the New Guinea language. And so this has evolved from kind of, even in the 20th century, very primitive way of doing things. It is now, with the advent of computers and smaller, faster chips, it's now gotten to the place where they can create a very speedy translation once a language is understood as it's written and as its representative symbolism is comprehended by translators. So, having said all that, Wycliffe Bible translators recently adopted their translation software Paratext for smartphones, dubbing it Paratext Lite, and has described it as a game changer in several ways. Paratext has allowed mobility in countries where technology like laptops and recording equipment, which is hard to access and maintain, has offered a almost universally accessible central database for collaboration in translation work, and is enabling missionaries with data stored in long outdated computer models to upload and update their work while sidestepping internet limitations. And some of those limitations are just physical infrastructure. So imagine if you will, going out into the bush somewhere, pick any place on the planet, going out to the bush where there are no power lines, no Wi-Fi, no 3G or 5G or whatever, and then trying to communicate to a native tribe the gospel in a language that they can readily assimilate and understand with symbolism, linguistic symbolism that actually means something to them. Very difficult, and the success rate of comprehension and retention has been a mixed bag with these older methods of spreading the gospel. So Doug Henneman, Wyclife's chief innovation and information officer, explained in a phone interview with the Christian Post that this new technology fundamentally changes the role of Westerners coming into foreign lands to do Bible translation. Instead, the natives are increasingly able to take part in the process. Quote, and that is the exciting thing that we're seeing in this shift over the last 7 to 10 years, where nationals, indigenous people, are wanting to do the work themselves. They are beginning to say, instead of just helping with you white Westerners do this, we want to do it and help to learn how to do it, Henneman said. And again, links in the show notes if you're interested in this project. And not on our roster here, but linked right from the Christian Post, we're going to just jump over to this article. Trump meets with abortion survivor, rallies pro-lifers to push for laws protecting babies. And this is by Samuel Smith, also a Christian Post reporter. And we have a shot of the president walking down the colonnade. President Trump met with an abortion survivor and a child who was born after just 20 weeks of gestation before urging thousands of pro-life supporters Thursday to pressure the passage of a federal law to protect babies who survive abortions. The 72-year-old Trump and top White House staff met with Melissa Odin. Melissa, and I hope that's how you pronounce your name. I'm sorry if I've messed it up. Who survived a saline solution abortion in 1977. And Micah Pickering, a 6-year-old child who was born in the 20th week of pregnancy, but survived during a White House meeting to promote the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, also known as Born Alive Infants Protection Act. Following the meeting, Trump spoke on a conference call with about 4,000 pro-life supporters, in which he not only called for passage of the legislation, but stressed the stark differences between his administration's policies and the pro-late-term abortion stances of Democrats running for president in 2020. I would suggest that pro-abortion can now be, officially referred to as infanticide. Links in the show notes, except for this one, you'll have to link it off of the actual Christian Post page. Let's return to the desk. That's all we have for you today. There was one lone guy out on the ice yesterday, possibly testing for ice depth, and if that is the case, we may have a little surprise for you either this weekend or next weekend. Can't really tell because this is totally dependent on the weather. In the meantime, we hope that you and your family have something fun planned to do this weekend, and that until we see you again, you are well and blessed. Take care.